The year 1864 dawned on a nation exhausted by 3 years of civil war. The Union had seen hope rise and fall, with victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg offering promise, but the Confederacy remained unbroken. In the East, Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia had outmaneuvered a series of Union generals. President Lincoln, facing re-election, desperately needed a commander who would fight and win. He had cycled through McClellan, Pope, Burnside, Hooker, and even Meade, but none could deliver decisive victory. Lincoln sought more than a battlefield tactician. He needed a strategist with vision and resolve. The answer came from the West, Ulysses S. Grant. Grant, unassuming and often rumpled, had achieved stunning victories. Forts Henry and Donelson, Shiloh, and the Vicksburg Campaign, which split the Confederacy and gave the Union control of the Mississippi. Grant understood the war's brutal reality. It was a contest of resources and will. In March 1864, Lincoln promoted Grant to lieutenant general, a rank not held since Washington. Grant now commanded all Union armies, unifying the war effort for the first time. The hopes of the Union and the fate of millions rested on his shoulders. Lincoln had finally found his general. The final brutal chapter of the Civil War was about to begin, with Grant as its author. The nation braced for a new kind of war. Grant's leadership would test the limits of endurance and resolve. The outcome would shape the future of the United States. The stakes had never been higher. The war's end, and the nation's fate, would be decided by Grant's hand. Grant didn't just plan battles. He envisioned a coordinated, relentless campaign across all fronts. For years, Union armies had acted independently, allowing the Confederacy to shift forces and survive. Grant's solution: simultaneous offensives everywhere, denying the South any chance to regroup. He called it the grim arithmetic of war, using the North's superior numbers and resources to wear down the enemy. The goal was not just to capture Richmond, but to destroy Lee's army and cripple the Confederacy. Grant's plan involved 5 coordinated offensives. In the East, the Army of the Potomac would engage Lee directly. General Butler would threaten Richmond from the southeast. In the West, General Banks targeted Mobile, Alabama. General Sigel would move through the Shenandoah Valley, cutting off vital Confederate supplies. Most crucially, Grant's trusted subordinate, William Tecumseh Sherman, would lead 100,000 men from Chattanooga toward Atlanta, the South's industrial heart. Sherman's mission: defeat Johnston's army and capture Atlanta, striking at the Confederacy's core. This two-pronged assault, Grant in Virginia, Sherman in Georgia, formed the backbone of Grant's grand strategy. The Union would attack everywhere, all at once. The Confederacy would be forced to fight on every front with no respite. Grant's vision was clear: total, coordinated pressure until the South collapsed. The war was about to enter its most decisive phase. In May 1864, Grant's campaign began as the Army of the Potomac crossed into the wilderness. There, 118,000 Union soldiers clashed with Lee's 64,000 in a brutal, chaotic fight. The dense forest turned into a hellscape, fires consumed the wounded, and the fighting was savage. After 2 days of horrific losses, Grant refused to retreat. Instead, he ordered his army forward, toward Richmond, not back to Washington. This decision electrified his men. For the first time, they had a general who would not back down. Grant and Lee became locked in a relentless campaign: Spotsylvania, North Anna, Cold Harbor. At the Bloody Angle, fighting raged for nearly 24 hours in mud and rain. At Cold Harbor, a disastrous frontal assault cost the Union 7,000 men in under an hour, a mistake Grant would always regret. In just over a month, Grant's army suffered 55,000 casualties. The press called him the Butcher, but Lee's army was bleeding too, and could not replace its losses. Grant pinned Lee near Richmond, forcing a siege at Petersburg. The war of maneuver was over. A war of attrition had begun. Grant's relentless pressure was breaking the Confederacy's strength. The cost was staggering, but the end was in sight. The fate of the nation hung in the balance. While Grant battled Lee, Sherman launched his own campaign in the West. In May 1864, Sherman led 100,000 men out of Chattanooga toward Atlanta, the South's industrial and railroad hub. Facing him was General Johnston, outnumbered and cautious, who relied on fortified positions and strategic retreats. Sherman avoided costly frontal assaults, instead using flanking maneuvers to threaten Johnston's supply lines. Each time, Johnston was forced to fall back, trading space for time. The campaign became a deadly chess match across northern Georgia. Battles erupted at Resaca, New Hope Church, and Kennesaw Mountain. Despite setbacks, Sherman's army steadily closed in on Atlanta. By July, the city's spires were visible. The campaign of maneuver was ending. A brutal siege was about to begin. Atlanta's fate, and the Confederacy's, hung in the balance. The next phase would decide the war in the West. As Sherman neared Atlanta, Confederate leaders lost patience with Johnston's retreats. President Davis replaced him with General John Bell Hood, known for reckless aggression. Hood launched desperate attacks at Peachtree Creek, Atlanta, and Ezra Church, each repulsed with heavy Confederate losses. Sherman settled in for a siege, bombarding the city and cutting its last railroads. In late August, Sherman's maneuver at Jonesboro severed Atlanta's final supply line. Hood was forced to evacuate, destroying military stores as he left. On September 2nd, Union troops entered Atlanta. Sherman telegraphed Lincoln, "Atlanta is ours, and fairly won." The North, weary from losses in Virginia, was electrified. The fall of Atlanta was a political and military triumph, boosting Lincoln's re-election prospects. It shattered Southern morale and renewed Northern resolve. The capture of Atlanta set the stage for Sherman's next, even more devastating campaign. The Confederacy was reeling. With Atlanta secured, Sherman made a bold decision. He would march his army 300 miles to the sea, living off the land, and destroying the South's resources. His target, Savannah. The march to the sea was psychological and economic warfare, designed to break the Confederacy's will. Sherman's troops destroyed railroads, factories, and farms, leaving Sherman's neckties twisted around trees. Foraging parties seized supplies. What couldn't be used was destroyed. The army advanced in two columns, virtually unopposed. In the north, anxiety grew. In the south, terror spread. On December 21, 1864, Sherman captured Savannah and offered it to Lincoln as a Christmas gift. The march crippled Georgia and sent shockwaves through the Confederacy. Sherman's campaign proved the South could no longer defend its heartland. The war's psychological toll deepened. The Confederacy's collapse was now only a matter of time. The Union's strategy of total war was working. Grant and Sherman's campaigns marked the rise of total war, targeting not just armies but the enemy's entire society. Grant's overland campaign bled the South's manpower dry, accepting high Union losses because the North could replace them and the South could not. Sherman's march shattered Southern morale, proving the Confederacy could not protect its people. Every burned barn and twisted rail sent a message: resistance was futile. Desertion soared as soldiers learned of devastation at home. The destruction of the Shenandoah Valley by Sheridan further starved Lee's army. The Union was fighting not just soldiers but the entire Confederate war machine. This strategy was harsh but effective. It hastened the war's end. The Confederacy was hollowed out from within. The final collapse was inevitable. By spring 1865, Grant's siege at Petersburg and Sherman's destructive march north had shattered the Confederacy. Sherman's army devastated South Carolina, capturing Columbia and cutting off Lee's retreat. In Virginia, Lee's army was starving and demoralized, trapped in the trenches. On April 2nd, Grant ordered a final assault. Union forces broke through at Petersburg, forcing Lee to abandon Richmond. The Confederate government fled as Union troops entered the burning city. Lee tried to escape west, but Grant's pursuit was relentless. At Appomattox Courthouse, Lee's army was surrounded. On April 9, 1865, Lee surrendered to Grant, who offered generous terms and rations to the starving Confederates. Soon after, Johnston surrendered to Sherman in North Carolina. The Civil War was over, the Union had been preserved, the nation could begin to heal. The campaigns of 1864 broke the Confederacy's back and made Union victory certain. Grant's and Sherman's strategies ended the stalemate and preserved the United States. Their campaigns also ensured the abolition of slavery. Union armies brought freedom to tens of thousands as they advanced. The destruction of the Southern economy shattered the slave system forever. The 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery, soon followed. Grant and Sherman's concept of total war shaped modern military doctrine. The Civil War became the first modern war, its lessons echoing through history. The cost was immense, but from the blood and fire, a new nation emerged. The United States moved closer to fulfilling its promise of liberty and equality. The terrible, swift sword of 1864 forged a new birth of freedom.